A new upgrade for a Game Boy Color. I can't wait to fit it. Hi, welcome back to the shed. When I first started doing tutorial videos for this channel, one of my earliest videos was making a Game Boy Color with a backlit screen, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to revisit that project with a newer screen kit. This is the version 2 from FunnyPlaying, and we've got a new bracket to help us center that, which I've got here, like a 3D printed plastic bracket. Last time I did it, it was so tricky to get the screen in place, and I had to move it around and have bits of tape. This bracket will hopefully make it easier. But when I looked online for some tutorials on how to install with that bracket, I couldn't find any. So hopefully this video will serve as quite useful for anyone else in the same predicament. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so we've got everything we need here. We've got a Game Boy Color, FunnyPlaying IPS kit, 3D printed bracket. Now we'll just pop these to one side for a moment and concentrate on the Game Boy Color. First things first, batteries in place. Make sure the volume's turned all the way up and switch on. Boot screen comes up, boot sound comes on, so we're doing well so far. Nintendo logo comes up clear, which is promising, and the game is working. Now I need to just check that the buttons are all okay. Direction controls all okay. We'll start. Yeah, everything's okay there. It's actually very unlikely that you'll come across a Game Boy Color that doesn't have a display that works. These displays are really good, really long lasting, but unfortunately they're not backlit. They're very difficult to see. So yes, we're going to remove it from a Game Boy that works perfectly well, and I know that goes against a lot of what I'm about, but this is in need of quite a good cleanup. It doesn't get much use because of that screen, and one of the good things about a Game Boy Color is that you can safely remove the LCD and keep it spare, keep it to one side in case it ever needs to go into another one for repairs. So you're not actually breaking or destroying anything. You remove that screen, you replace it with a different one, but the existing screen, it's not attached to the motherboard like it is on a DMG Game Boy. It's a separate piece, so we're all right with that. I'm at peace with that. I love these in the, I think it's called the Kiwi green. It's one of the best colours of Game Boy that ever came out, and I think I've got a glass lens somewhere. This lens is in pretty decent condition already, so we'll see how that goes. The kit itself, IPS LCD in there, which I believe originally were for BlackBerry phones, that attach on there with these little connectors here. FunnyPlaying sticker on there, and the Z Labs one as well. These are being distributed by Z Labs. I actually got this from Deadpan Robot in the UK. Also comes with this adhesive strip to locate the LCD in place, but in theory this bracket, which I also got from Deadpan Robot, I'll put links in my description, the adhesive hopefully won't be needed when we're using the bracket, but we'll see how that goes. I'm going to open up my Game Boy Color console, remove our batteries. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tri-wing screws. We've seen these before in my other project, so we'll take those out first. So that's the screws all out, so we can separate out the... Now these are great. I always say to people, if they're getting into modding, one of the best consoles to start with is the Game Boy Color, because it's so simple in terms of taking it apart. The back just comes off and there's no components on there, so that can just sit out of the way. The motherboard is just one piece and it's housed inside the front shell with just a few screws. Now these are cross heads, so I'll use a different screwdriver for those. Okay, now before we lift this out, you can see the connector for the screen at the top. Now that is where our ribbon cable is going to connect later there, like that. We need to remove this. All you need to do is just lift up these plastic tabs at the side. I'm using a spudger for that. You can do both at the same time if you can get your hands on two spudgers. There we go, lift them up like that. Carefully obviously, because you don't want to snap any of these plastic bits off. Your motherboard will lift up, and then if you hold the ribbon you can just gently ease that out of your motherboard. And inside the shell you will have your power switch. You'll have the little infrared transmitter bit if you're swapping Pokemon. We'll remove our silicone parts, which all look to be in good shape, and our buttons. And if I tip it like that, you'll see the screen won't fall out because the screen's held in with some adhesive. What we'll aim for is to get into, probably this top corner is going to be easiest because we can get in there. So if I have a bit of pressure downward there, get the spudger just underneath. Now once that's in place, everything will get much easier because I'll just ease that up there, and once that's come away all the way along, that is our screen completely intact, so I can put that away for replacing on another Game Boy should it need it. I've said this before, if you try and lever it out from the front, you're going to dent that soft plastic around the edge of the lens, and we do not want that to happen. Once you've got one corner away, you just carefully apply pressure all the way around, follow that around as you peel away the plastic, and ideally we'll do it without leaving any sticky residue on the plastic, or without leaving much sticky residue on the plastic. That's all away. I'll clean that up more afterwards because I've got like all the little bits down the gap that I want to clean up as well. I've also got the adhesive that the screen was originally stuck to that needs taking out. Point of the spudger and try and get under that little bit there. There we go. Once that lifts, get it in your finger and thumb and just carefully peel that back. We won't be needing that afterwards anyway. There we go. I was looking on FunnyPlaying's website earlier and I screenshotted key bits from the instructions, so that's what it looks like when it's all in place. That's how it's going to look when it's all cut out, and these are the bits that I need to remove. So there's the bit just above the D-pad here, and there's these central bits around there, and those three little tabs at the top there as well. So basically I'm keeping that side and this little angled bit here, and removing all the other bits. This is actually in the way a little bit. When you look at the bracket that we've got, there's a curve on it which I suspect goes here like that. So that's just going to sit inside there. That's where the screen is going to sit, so that tiny section is going to need to be removed. So I'm just going to take those out with my Dremel. These little cylindrical ceramic bits tend to be quite good for removing these sections. It does get hot, which means it gets softer, goes a little bit mushy, so you just come away from it, and then when it cools it's a bit harder and it'll break off. I'm going to remove those bits and we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to try my Games Workshop scraping tool to remove any excess plastic and see if we can clean it up a little bit more. I am absolutely covered in bits of green plastic. The bits are all flattened off where we need them. Hopefully that will allow the screen to sit in there nice and flat. I've removed the bit there to give us clearance. I did actually end up breaking off one of these. You see like this little support pin there? There's one just above here and it snapped off. It helps locate the silicone membrane that goes over the buttons here, so it would go over that part around the buttons and it'd just kind of pop through there, but the other bits will hold it in place okay, so it's not the end of the world. Sometimes, like if you snap off a screw post or one of these, that can cause real problems because that helps with holding it all together, but in this case we'll be all right. So let's take a look. The screen should now sit easily in there. That just drops straight in and it seems to be fairly flat. I can have a look at the front here and see if it fits flush against all of the plastic. Look for any bits where it comes away and where I might need to remove more of the plastic behind, but it looks like there's not going to be any issues with that. It all seems to fit absolutely okay. Perhaps a tiny bit raised at the top. I reckon I've got a little bit more, just a tiny bit more to get out at the top. Yeah, happy with that. It was worth doing the extra bit. It's one of those, if you're going to all the trouble of doing these mods for the sake of an extra 5 minutes just making sure something is right, it's worth the effort. So I've got my brackets that go in here. It's easy to spot where that one goes. I know I said I couldn't find any guides, so I'm just kind of winging it like I always do, but that will sit in here like that and just sit at the bottom. Now I've kind of ground that bit down, that's level with the bracket here, and again that's where the screen will sit, sort of in the gap like that. So I'm assuming that it's flat. Now because it's a bracket going across there, I know that's going on the back, because if it's on the front you're going to have these black bars across your screen. So yeah, I couldn't find any guides, but now I'm actually looking at it, it's fairly self-explanatory. This one here has a raised strip there like that, which I would assume will go down here. There's only one way up you can get that, because that needs to go down the side, so that fits in place there. So with a little bit of a test fit, don't want to force anything, that seems to fit fairly well in place. It does need pressing down and it does bulge a little bit. So what I'm going to do, a bit like you do on the Game Boy Advance SP, I'm going to remove these little bumps which are there just to kind of secure things in place. But they bring things in a little bit and we're looking for a more perfect fit. So I'm just going to remove those. And I think my craft knife is going to be best for getting those off. Right, that's done. Now if you're using sharp knives, obviously do be careful. It's easy to slip and it's difficult to finish a job with bleeding fingers, so yeah, just be careful. Now the screen's got a protective layer on it, so it's fine for just dropping in and checking and testing over and over again like this. It's only when you're finishing off the job that you've got to make sure you've got everything just right. And now hopefully that bracket will just drop in a bit more easily. That's much better. So it doesn't wobble from side to side. It'll go up and down a little bit, but that's okay as long as it locks the other bits in place. Looking at it now, I'm looking at the little dent there. I was looking at this guide here. It looks like that part might have been worth keeping because it just keeps the bracket in place, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. Basically, once I've got the screen in place, I'm going to use a little bit of capped on tape, this stuff, and just stick it down so it holds in place, and that'll be fine. Don't think I'm going to need the double-sided tape because that'll just hold it in place. The thing I've found that's the worst with the double-sided tape in the past is if you end up needing to take it out and it's stuck and you pull it and you can damage the LCD. We don't want that. So this is the way I'm going to do it. And then if I need to take it apart and put the double-sided tape in, it'll be easy to do. Will this little infrared bit fit in place? Because that was something that the guide said, just make sure that that will slot in. So that fits there. Screen goes in and up against it. It just about fits, but it is tight against that. The bracket sits fine. That's up against there, okay. That's all alright there, but it's this bit that seems just a tiny bit thick to allow the screen to go in place. It'll go in, but it's a tight fit, and I do not want a tight fit. It'll squeeze in, but the strain on the LCD might end up distorting the display and things. Maybe like an abrasive, just thin it enough. So this is just sanding down that surface little bits at a time, and it won't scratch the inside, whereas if I use a knife and I slip it might scratch the inside. So this is just a bit of old skateboard grip tape, and I'll just keep going with that. Well, that's definitely getting thinner because it had the numbers on it before, like little numbers from the moulding, and they're not there anymore. Just give it a bit of a clean up. Get that in place there, that sits in. Screen in place and drops down. Now again, that's a tight fit, but not so bad that it's going to put any distortion on the screen. I'm going to take just a tiny bit more off that and then we'll be fine. So the D-pad will sit in here. When the screen is in place, here like this, that's going to be a little bit in the way. So I need to take just the top edge off there. Right, so the D-pad has now got the top just trimmed down a little bit, so that fits in there and fits level. And when we check that with the bracket, like that, everything ready and in place. What we're doing now is we're going to clean everything up. We've got the buttons to clean. All I'm using here is baby wet wipes. If they're gentle enough to not cause any damage to babies, then they'll be nice and gentle on our ancient gaming hardware. That's always my logic with them anyway. Just quick wipe down to get them wet, and then the toothbrush will clear out the rest. If you've got any awkward inside corners like that to get at, sharp end of a spudger just on the inside edge of the cloth. You just whiz around and that cleans out those really well, and then you can finish up with the toothbrush. Last step with all of this will be a dry microfiber cloth to get the last stubborn bits out. You've got the bits where there's like any raised text or indented text. You can clean all that out too. It'll come out looking really good. You just need to be patient. Feed it through the holes where the buttons go. Just give it a whiz round, make sure they're clean, because that's where it collects any dirt usually. And around the edge of the D-pad as well. And start select. Once you've got it at the back and you pull it, it's easy. Just a bit of a wiggle. Speaker then, just good rub with the cloth, and then again, toothbrush here, worth doing on the inside as well. Just get any dirt or dust out of those gaps. And worth going just around the edge where the mould fits together as well. A few bits down here need cleaning. This is great, it's just like surface level dirt, it's coming off dead easy. And rub down with the microfiber cloth, make sure everything's all clean. Right, now there is a little bit of soldering to do shortly, so I've switched on my soldering iron and that's warming up. Actually, I don't know even if I do need to do soldering. When I look at the rib and it's got this tab attached, so I might get away without soldering. Right, that's front shell done, back shell. There's hardly any cleaning needed on this really. And I think we're good to go for getting it back together. A and B in place. And I'll start select. That's there with the trimmed bit facing upwards. This I think is going to have to go on afterwards, but the A and B button will be fine. That in place there. That sits fine. So now my screen, going to need the bit attaching. Now this I always find an absolute pain, so I think before I peel off the front of the screen it's going to be worth me trying to get those connected first and then get the other bits in place. So they're connected together. It wasn't too hard this time. Famous last words, I've probably messed it right up. My bracket, let's not forget that. Tension. Screen drops in. That holds in place there. Before I even flip that over, it might be worth starting going with the tape. That will flip over here, and again some tape to hold it in place is probably going to be a good idea. That on before I forget. See, that's okay, that will go over the screen, so that's not in the way, it's not causing any problems. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a catch up here. When this was in place, I realised that the strip was facing the wrong direction, and although I could fold it over and move it to here, I thought it might be better to desolder it, so I removed that with the soldering iron, swapped it around so it's facing the other way. That's hopefully going to fit much better in that space. So with the bracket at the bottom, it locates the screen quite nicely, but we do have the other bracket which will do two things. It will centre this side, and also because it's slightly raised, it raises it to the same level as the back of this, so it'll protect all of that part of the ribbon from any undue pressure. So this should just sit in here like that. Again, if you're doing this and you've got one of these brackets, then I would say don't remove that little bit of plastic from the top there. I'd leave that in and it'll hold things in place a bit better. I've got my ribbon to go in here now. That is going to be a little bit awkward because it's not very far that it can reach. So what I'm going to do is move the bracket out of the way. I will remember to put it back in. Slot it into my motherboard, make sure it goes all the way in. Pinch that down each side, just with the plastic clip going down. Be careful because you don't want to damage the ribbon, you don't want to damage the plastic, you don't want to damage anything. So with that then attached, the bracket can sit in. Make sure it's located properly, and then the board should just sit flat on top of there. Just check at the top, that's going to go in place there. There will be a little bit of resistance because we've got quite a thick screen gone in place there, but at the bottom that should sit nice and flat. Look at the front, everything seems okay. Again, while you're doing all this, try and avoid touching the screen itself. It's fine, you'll be able to clean it up, but it's just easier to not get your fingerprints on there in the first place. Undo the screws slightly till you hear the little click. Been through this before on my other videos if you've watched any of my others. If you haven't, if this is my first video that you've watched, hello, hope you've liked it. There's plenty more nonsense like this on my channel if you want to go back and have a look. And if you want to see new stuff, you can go and subscribe if you're a real glutton for punishment. My last post, I realised I've got up to 2,000 subscribers, which is ace. Not 2,000 people actually sign up to watch my videos. So thanks so much for that. But if you've stopped by to watch this video today, I do really appreciate it. I enjoy putting these together, but it'd be nothing without people actually watching them and feeding back on them. So thanks. Don't forget the power switch just drops in here. Make sure it's in the off position. You see like the little tab that went there, that just slots in here near where the infrared LEDs are. It'll just slot in that gap, and this is just our brightness adjuster. You just tap on top to adjust the brightness there. Back should just slot on quite easily, and we'll screw that in place. Again, tri-wing screwdriver for those. It was the Phillips on the inside. Just put those in to start off. Don't necessarily fasten them all the way down. Get all 6 in place, and then I'll be able to pick it up and hold it in a better position for getting the screws tightened up. I say tightened up, don't do them tight. Tightening up screws in plastic shells is just asking for trouble. Once they stop rotating, then you're fine. They're all in place. Middle ones first, and then the bottom ones, because they're pretty risk-free, and then the top ones. Now the top ones are where the LCD is positioned, so just be careful. Just make sure that they close up without any excess pressure, because if you're having to force it, you've probably got something in the wrong place, and you take it apart and check again before tightening it all up. That's okay there. And then finally this one. Right, so batteries. Moment of truth. Fingers crossed. We're in, and wow. Okay, so if you're thinking about getting one of these and you're on the fence about getting one of the 3D printed brackets, I mean, look how neatly positioned that is. That is perfectly centered. That's amazing. So if you're in the UK, Deadpan Robot sell those. They sold me the kit for the screen as well. I use them for all of my modding stuff, and they're brilliant. So yeah, go and hit them up if you need to get one of these. But if you're getting one of the kits, it's worth the extra. I think it was like £5 for that 3D printed kit. Honestly, for the headaches I had when I was trying to line it up last time I did this mod, seriously, the bracket is just, it makes it into a completely different mod. Really accessible. Even if it's one of your first mods you've ever done, essentially all you're doing is cutting out the bits of plastic and then putting it together. Finishing touches now, and I've got a glass screen. So again, this is one, like in my last video, it's not got any adhesive on, so I'm just going to put a bit of double-sided tape in place and then stick it down. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on that. I'll link my other video here if I remember, and you can go and have a look at that. It's got a whole load of stuff about how to replace the lens if you can't be bothered taking apart the Game Boy, which, you know, if all you've done is bought a lens and you're keeping the screen as is, you've seen all the hassle of dismantling and putting it back together. If you want to avoid that, then that video will show you how to do that. But what I'm going to do here is stick it in place. I'll just switch that off for now. Put some double-sided tape. Those in place, all I need to do is peel off the backing. Noticed a couple of tiny specks of dust. Just a little bit of low tack masking tape looped back on itself will pick them up. So move that into position. Oh, that's lovely. Love it. Absolutely love the Game Boys in this colour. Right, let's try switching on again. Woo! And then, as I said before, this bit on top will adjust the brightness. So I'll just tap it and it'll go brighter, brighter, and then down to dim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which is great because there's no switches or anything like that on there. It's really subtly put in there. Just tap to change your brightness. So if you want your battery to last longer, have it on your dim setting. If you can't see, if you're in bright sunlight, then you ramp it up a little bit. You've got the option there, which is quite nice. Right, when I tested it before, it was the Tetris game. That was stupid. It's a Game Boy Color. Let's have Tetris DX. I am absolutely in love with this Game Boy. That looks just phenomenal. There's no light leakage at the sides at all. Everything fits absolutely perfectly. The bracket helps the screen be completely neat, even for someone as obsessive like me in terms of fussing about these things. That is perfect. Just perfect. It's a perfect Game Boy Color. I'm absolutely thrilled with this mod. Yeah, there's not much more I can say. I just can't wait to go and play on it. It's wonderful. I love it. Go and get one of these kits. That was dead easy. Easier than the last time I did it. Bit of a fiddle in terms of cutting out the sections of the shell. Some places sell pre-cut shells, but all you've got to do is drop the screen in, put it all together, and you're sorted. It's great. Right, okay, so I know I've done one of these before, but that was really, really impressive. The bracket made all the difference. The new screen looks phenomenal. The brightness control couldn't be easier, just tapping on the front like that to change the brightness. In that green shell, it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'm thrilled with it. So I'm going to go and play with it now. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to see more like that, as I say, go and take a look on my channel, have a look at my other stuff, subscribe if you like it. I would appreciate it. 2,000 subscribers, who'd have thought? Thanks very much, and I will see you next time. Bye.